Hi, friends. My name is Bhavya Mangala, and welcome you all in the 22nd episode of Unfiltered Conversation. This series started around 4 months back, and the idea of that series was that how we can talk to the people who are doing something extraordinary, but we are not aware about it, that what they are doing at the moment. And another important aspect was that how open and transparent we can talk to them. We started our series with respect to the presentation. We had 6 episodes with respect to that. Followed by, we had a series of 11 episodes where we talked about mindfulness. And now this is a series with respect to the writer's mindset. The idea is to understand that how a writer thinks, what are the challenges a writer faces, and after writing a book, if the challenges are over or there are some new challenges that come once you complete the book, now you want to publish it and you want to make sure that it reaches to the maximum people. Today, I have a very, very interesting guest. His name is Mr. Sanjay Chandra. He has got an illustrious career of more than 43 years. He is basically an electrical engineer and he has worked in corporate for many years. And he has written three different books, entirely different subjects. So let's understand from him about his experiences with respect to life, about writing a book, about the different posts that he's writing on the Pioneer and the Hindu, and let's see what happens in this episode. Mr. Chandra, welcome to the episode. Namaskar.
Namaskar. So, thank you very much, Mr. Mangla, for your very warm and wonderful introduction. So, a little about myself
Yep,
before we
sure.
start the conversation. See, I am now 65 plus, and
Hmm.
so I was born at a time in a generation uh, a few years after independence where our parents were excited about an independent India, and they were
Hmm.
not really aware about what the future held for their children. And those were the times when it was only two professions which were considered respectable for the middle class families, either to be an engineer or a doctor. And since my family, my father and my both from my father's and mother's side, they were first generation engineers. So it was they wanted me to be an engineer. So my course was decided probably right at my birth itself. Now, since my father was in the state services, so like all middle class families, he wanted me to join. He's also an electrical engineer, and so he was in the state services. So he wanted me to join the IAS. That was his, and then I had my younger brother. So both of us, he wanted that we should join the IAS, but that would come much later. And so I did my schooling. He was in a transferable job. We moved around every 2 to 3 years, different places within the state. And then eventually, after my higher secondary at that time, I first joined a premier engineering and science institute that was BITS Pilani. Now, BITS Pilani had a very complex system of awarding the degrees or awarding the courses that you would join. So after the first year was general, then after first year you would get allocated to the science and engineering stream, and then after the second year, you based on your performance, you would get allocated the either science or engineering. So after 2 years, I got allocated science, and that was a catastrophe for my family. I would say my parents, and so we started looking for an alternate engineering college, and then I joined HPTI in Kanpur, which was an engineering college. I joined that, and in fact, I was first class first all through the my entire tenure there, each of the 4 years, and I joined BHEL as my first job, and then from BHEL I moved to. Then by the time I was completing that, I got into railways and railway services, and I joined the railway services. And I had already joined railway services, which were for engineers considered to be premier services. So my heart was not much on IAS. I tried once and then could not clear the prelims, and then thereafter I dropped the idea. My initial postings were on the eastern sector in West Bengal and Bihar. And then I got an opportunity to move to Delhi on a deputation initially in a railway public sector undertaking. I joined, came there, and then they offered me the option of staying back, and so I took a voluntary retirement from railways and continued with the organization. And in 2009, since I felt that now there were no further There was no further scope for any going up the ladder because it was a predominantly a civil construction organization. So I quit and joined the private sector for 5 years. I established a business unit there. And at the age of 55, I felt that enough was enough. I no longer wanted to take instructions from others. So I wanted to do something on my own, which had been my initial dream that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so I quit and got into consultancy and took up a lot of consultancy assignments also. Around that time, the writing bug caught me, and then I started writing. So that's and thereafter, since then, I have been more into writing and less into my consultancy. And I am a speaker. I am a coach also. I conduct workshops on creative writing. I also realized over my writing journey that the upcoming authors face a lot of issues, and so I started a show known as The Show, where we bring in upcoming artists and to showcase their talent, talk about their life. I am an avid reader, so I read books, and so I started writing reviews also for the books and started sharing them on my website. And so you can say that I am now, and then I wanted to give back to community what I have so far received. So I got involved with my community, my condominium complex, RWAs also, and so that's it. I'm doing a lot of things, but mostly things to do with literature. We organized a literature festival also within the community, and it was a pan-India festival, I would say. Almost about 25 authors from across India came this year. Hopefully next year also we'll be doing that. We will be looking for sponsors for that. So because it's an expensive thing, and
Yeah.
so that's my journey in brief.
You said that you did your engineering from HBTI, and then throughout your career, you worked primarily with respect to the engineering related. In generally the engineers are considered to be a bit dry, bit introvert. Then how you thought about writing a book? Means it was there from the very beginning, or you were writing it from the very early stage of your career, or how it all started to
So
express
that's a
yourself in words?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. And in fact, I was recently clearing my old papers and I came across a poem and a couple of short stories that must have probably written when I was in the school. Uh,
Okay.
and thereafter, though I was not very much into, I was into debates, etc., in my school and college also, but not into writing as such, except reading. I was fond of reading even then also. So I was not into writing, and so thereafter there was I would say there was a lull. I did not write anything. Now, when I in 2014, when I had quit my active professional career, uh, social media was coming up, and I was also on the Facebook. So I wrote a few of my anecdotes from my life. Uh, I think I must have written three such anecdotes, and then I stopped. And when I stopped, then my friends started asking me when is my next write up coming on the Facebook. So that's when I realized that okay, there are people who are actually reading them, and so the first my first book, in fact, this was the book, The Life and Times of a Common Man. I hope everybody can see that. Uh, the idea of this book came to me during my professional career. I came across several people who would be coming to me. I mean, initially they would come to me and they would seek advice that they wanted their child to join an engineering course. And I would ask them because I knew that by that time in the 21st century, a lot of other alternate career opportunities had already opened up, and engineering was not such a well-paying job for bulk of the people. I mean, the cream of engineering obviously would always get cream of any profession would always get a better had better prospects, but not the general students. And so I would ask them, but they would still insist, and they would get their children admitted or sons admitted to even tier 2 or tier 3 engineering colleges. And then The sad part was, Mr. Mangla, that the same people, after 4 years of this thing, and then after having seen life for one more year, they would come back to me and they would request me if I could get a job for their child, even if it meant pay a pittance of maybe just about 5,000 rupees.
Yeah. Good.
And so that's what I thought, that I should write from my own life experiences, so that in fact the basic underlying theme of my manuscript was that no child is born poor or rich. A child is born a child. It does not know whether
Yeah.
it's poor or rich, and it does not know what it wants to do. And it's the parents. Normally, it's the parents who impose their will, their own dreams on their child, project their own dreams on their child. And I mean, the child would probably do much better if it was left to pursue its own dreams and passions. So I
Mhm.
wrote this book in an anecdotal form, right, almost right since my birth, and till recently, till I mean, till about 2018 or 19. And when I read through the draft, I realized that it had also become a social commentary of how I perceive the society and the country had changed in a lot of way, and yet many things had still remained unchanged. And that's how this that was the genesis of this book, of The Life and Times of a Common Man. Around the time when I had completed my manuscript, I had been observing children performing by the roadside on traffic signals. And we have become so used to, and it's not just in India. Any country you go to, you would find these street performers. And what these children are trying to do, they are only trying to earn a little money for their families, for a better, decent living. Yet, if you look at them, you find that they are, many of them have talent. So I thought that, okay, I mean, this was an observation, and I realized that, okay, if there's someone, some authority, some individual who can nurture this talent, that probably they can do wonders. They can they can dream and even work towards realizing those dreams. And so that story of that family became the background of my
Gymnast.
second book, The Gymnast. Uh,
So, Mr. Chandra, before you talk about the next book,
yeah,
I could see both the covers. They are very interesting. The first book, which is about a common man, I could see a train there. And generally, whenever we are writing a book, then we also want, just like in the social media, we say that thumbnail is the most important thing. That
yeah,
thumbnail gives an impression whether you should click it or not. So,
yeah.
in your case, what was the thought process and how challenging or easy it was to decide about the book cover with the train behind? And why train?
Okay. So since I had been a railwayman in my professional journey, so the train for me at that point of time was seemed to be a natural progression of my thoughts. And
Mhm.
in fact, if you would notice, so this cover was designed. This is a water paint. This is a water painting, a watercolor painting, and this was I have an ex colleague and a dear friend who is into water color painting. So I
Okay.
asked him that if he could think of. I narrated to him the synopsis of my manuscript, and I asked him if he could design a cover for me. And in fact, he designed the cover. And in fact,
Okay.
if you would see the two persons standing here,
Yeah.
in fact, he added this touch. Not many people have been able to correlate. Actually, he painted me and my wife. So that was the basis. And the since it kind of also resonated. Common man in India is the person who is using trains very extensively. So that was one thing. And even the title also, that's how it came about, that since it was based on my life, so the Life and Times of a Common Man. And the theme was that no child is common. No child is
Okay.
common. Every individual is special, uh, for himself or herself, or for the family, or for the community around
Good.
him or
Good.
her. So that's how this cover was designed. And since you spoke about the gymnast cover, so this was
Yeah, that is
another.
very interesting. Yeah, yeah.
So this
So what's
was
the story behind this cover? Yeah.
so I'll tell you. On my WhatsApp group, one of the WhatsApp groups, there was an artist who was into she's into pencil sketches,
Okay.
and I asked her if she would like to design any such any a sketch for my cover. And see the top part of this cover, which is in black and white, which is in black and white. The idea was that you can see the three children, which are also in my book. These three children performing by the roadside. One child is doing a trapeze walk or a tightrope walk, and one person is singing and acting. One girl is singing acting, and the boy is playing flute. In fact, that is the three. Those are the three characters from my novel. And so I this is I just gave her the suggestion, and she created a pencil sketch. Now,
Yeah.
since it's a journey of one of the girl who's walking on the tightrope, it's her journey, and she actually goes on to perform
Yeah.
as a gymnast. So my publishers, when they went into the designing of the cover, they used the this is the black and white, and this is the color which shows the gymnast performing. And so this is the present. This is the present, as I would say. And so that's how this cover came about.
And what about the third book?
So the third book is a murder mystery. It's titled Behind Closed Doors, and it's a murder mystery. Uh, I had been very fond of several of the renowned detectives created by earlier authors, particularly Agatha Christie and Hercule Poirot, and Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle, and more recently Robert Galbraith's Cormoran Strike. Uh, Not many people know it, but Robert Galbraith is. I mean, J.K. Rowling writes as many books she writes as Robert Galbraith, and so she has created this detective and his assistant, a lady. I think it's Ella Cott. Some Ella Cott is the name. So I was very fond of reading these detective series, and so it was only. I'm quite surprised that why it took me so long. I mean, it was only natural that I created a murder mystery. There's a death in a condominium complex, and then this detective happens to be present in that society, and how the clues are there. Going through the clues, how he generates that, how he solves the mystery. That is what this book is all about.
Uh, as you just talked about all the three books, they are entirely different from each other.
Yeah.
How easy or difficult it is as a writer to think? Because generally, if you are in mystery, then you write only mystery. If you are talking about, say, love, then you're only talking about love. If you are talking about fiction, you are talking only about fiction. So how easy or difficult it was? How that mind works in your case? How the thought comes?
Okay, so in my case, I would say that no, it was not difficult for me. In fact, my
Mhm.
fourth manuscript is on yet another sensitive topic altogether, but on which I am working. It was not difficult for me in the sense that once I am working on a particular manuscript, then I get into, like most of the writers, probably I get into the skin of the under the skin of the characters. And that's how my first book obviously was memoirs, which is relatively easy since you are writing about your own life and anecdotes from your own life. It is easy as well as difficult at the same time, because then you have to think that, okay, so what you should include and what you should not include, because there could be events that you may not want to include.
Yeah.
So memoirs were relatively easy. The second was, as I said, once again, came out of an observation of these street performers that I wrote. And when I got into, and once I started work on my third manuscript only after I had completed my second manuscript, or the previous manuscript. So then
Mhm.
I had to get into that detective, under the skin of that detective, that what how he would be thinking. And then for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, then I was thinking like him, and thinking like the different characters that I had created. So I think it is probably easier for me because since I am a new writer, that is part of it. But because I am not biased by genres, since I love reading, I read anything and everything that comes my way. So I enjoy all genres. But then you are, as you rightly pointed out, romance is something which I am not very sure uh, whether I want to explore that, but then I whether I would be able to do that or not, I'm not very sure at this stage in my life. But who knows what the future holds?
So, Chandra, another important aspect with respect to the writer is the big challenge is to write a book. But then the bigger challenge is to publish a book. How easy or difficult for you, in your case, to publish, especially your first book? Because after that, it becomes comparatively easy because we know the baby steps. But how easy or difficult, and what was your experience at that time?
Okay, so I will correct you slightly.
Okay.
Even writing the book itself is not an easy job. No, the first
Yep.
draft is easy. First draft is easy,
Yep.
relatively easy. But then uh, you one has to the writer has to go through a lot of iterations because each of my manuscript I have gone through multiple iterations.
Mhm.
I created the first draft and then I sat down and read it once thoroughly. Then I made changes, edited and made changes. Then third draft, etc. Then after the third draft, my biggest critiques are my wife and my daughter. I gave it. My wife was an editor, freelance editor for some time in her life when we had shifted to Delhi. And so my first critique was usually my wife, who would I would give her the manuscript, and then she would point out the short deficiencies and shortcomings. So that would become the fourth draft, and then after the fourth or even the fifth draft, then my daughter would take over and then she would point out the inconsistencies in the language or things like that, and then that would become the sixth draft. Only when I was after those this fifth or sixth draft, when I was confident that now I could send it across to the publishers, then yes, then as you rightly pointed out, then the journey starts. And so I would even in my first manuscript also I had first sent it to all the traditional publishers. I was whatever their guidelines and everything, and so they usually take from anywhere from 4 weeks to 12 weeks or 4 months or so far to respond. And I was also in a hurry to see my book, hold the copy of my book in my hands. So once I had received this, I still waited for 3 months, and then thereafter I approached I looked at the self-publishing publishers, and then I came across the Notion Press. And since my manuscript had already gone through these different steps, so they published it as it is. Now, my second book also, I followed the same process. I did not want to go, since it was my second manuscript, I did not want to go to this for self publishing. So, and around that time, I had also come across literary agents. So, one of the literary agents, she took up my manuscript and she sent it across to various publishers. And then it caught the attention of one publisher. Garuda Prakashan was the name. And so they came back, they were excited, they wanted to take it up. Now, you would not believe it, even after those six iterations, the manuscript still went through three more iterations with their editor. Their editing was perfect. I mean, they were able to point out a lot of inconsistencies which I had to correct. And it took almost about a year before they were ready to say. And then they sent me the final PDF file. And even by that time, even in that PDF file, it's something like when you clean your room or your table, and then you are able to see more dust. So it was something like this. And so even in that also, I made some changes, some corrections, and then they published it. And around that time, that was the time when uh, uh, the paper for printing was not easily available, and it had the prices had gone up, and so they were not having the paper itself, and so it took another 3 months, and then it got published. So from the time that I had written my manuscript, it took almost about 1.5 years for the book to be published.
And how is the experience of touching the book, feeling the book in your
Oh,
hand, which you have written?
it's great. It's great. I mean, when your copies come to you, and you open the packet, so it feels great. And so third book also went through the same kind of iterations. But then the third publisher, their editing was not, I would say, not so good, in the sense that they did not have a structured editor editorial team with them. So it was basically what had been already edited by me or my wife, but still they sent me the final, the PDF, etc. And that PDF also I went through iterations almost about 4 or 5 times. It took another 2 to 3 months before it got published. So that becomes the yes. After, even after the first manuscript, also it takes time. It's a long journey. You have to not lose patience. You have to make it as perfect as you can. And
And
then
just,
the yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
see, tell the people who wanted to write, who are writing it, but they are stuck somewhere because generally it is said that there is some writer's mindset or writer block is there that you are writing and but then in between you stop and then you're not getting an idea, especially when you're writing a mystery or something like that. So do you also face some challenge like that, or would you like to share any of your experience to the listeners?
Yes. There would be days when you have a writer's block. There would be days, it may extend into weeks, it may extend into months, when you would have a writer's block, you don't have an idea. But the writers, whether it's a new writer or even an older writer, I mean, I was once hearing Jeffrey Archer, and he said that
Mhm.
he has developed he says that you have to be structured and disciplined about writing also, like any other profession. He says
Okay.
that you have to have that set time where you would sit in front of your laptop or computer, and you may stare at the screen for hours on end during that time. Does not matter. You may write only one line. Does not matter. I mean, or a page, does not matter. But he says that you should have that discipline, that you would sit in front of your computer and you would write something, however short or long, but you would write something. Now, in my case, when I am writing this, whatever manuscript or articles that I am writing, even when I am out for my walk, actually I am thinking about what I have written and how I can improve upon it. So once again you have to get into the that mode, that you have to think. It's something like, where you have been in a proactive professional life, and I also have been in an active professional life otherwise. And if we have a challenge at workplace, then we think about it. We keep thinking about it. So writing is also like that. And so have patience and do not lose hope. Once you have developed that kind of a discipline and a structure, it will automatically come in.
I'm seeing that regularly. You're also writing for the newspaper, also Pioneer and Hindu, and I could see that you're writing about many different kind of topics, variety of things that you're talking. Like very recently, I've seen that you have also reviewed a book. The name of the book is "The Empress of Indraprastha Entering Kuru Vansh," and then "Freedom for All: Breaking Gender Stereotype." How you get the idea? How you use your thoughts and ideas to write something? From where all that come? Can you share a little bit about that?
So a writer has to be someone who is extremely observant about his surroundings or her surroundings.
Mhm,
And
mhm, mhm.
each individual in this universe is faces events and incidents. Now, you only have to observe that, and that is what I do.
Mhm.
There could be some stray comment that I hear somewhere, and
Okay.
or a stray incident that I have seen somewhere, and
Mhm.
that might usually, that's the advantage of the wisdom, or the wisdom that you get out of age, since I have seen 65 years. So once you are that old, e- e- eventually, सी अल्टीमेटली जैसे हिंदी में बोलते हैं कि वो आपके जो रस है वो तो उतने ही है, साथ ही हैं. And
See,
whatever incident that you are facing, or whatever event that you are facing, I mean, they would all the emotions would get condensed into those seven rusts. And so usually what I do is, because I am highly observant, So any stray incident or stray remark or something that triggers a memory, and so I take that memory for that event or incident, and then out of that memory and then more anecdotes from my life or whatever I saw later or somewhere, that I write these articles. But writing an article is a totally different ballgame altogether, against a manuscript, that too fiction. And how I got into writing an article. See, last year, 2022, towards the end, my mother was a cancer patient, and towards the end of 2022, the last 3 months before she died in early January last year, were difficult for me. And that was the time when actually I would say I had the longest writer's block. Then she passed away, and then probably I was in grief, and so I did not write anything. It was another author actually. Then I again started going out for literature festivals, and my creative writing workshops and talking to students and youngsters and professors. So I met another fellow writer there, younger, much younger, almost 15 years younger than me. And so she told me, she said, "Ki, why don't you have such a vast experience, and there are so many anecdotes." We sat talking, and I narrated a few anecdotes. She narrated a few anecdotes. She said, "Why, you have so many anecdotes, so much of things that you have seen. Why don't you start writing articles?" I said, "Okay, let me try that." Before that, I had written only one article, and that incidentally, that my one article itself got selected for for Hindu and got published there. And she said, if nothing else, she said, you write one article every week. And if nothing else, after 52 weeks, you will have 52 articles. You can condense them into a book and publish a book.
Yeah,
Uh,
good logic.
that was something, that was a very insightful thing for me. And then I started writing articles. Now, the challenge is that articles, typically what you are sending out, you are used to writing long articles. Now,
Yeah.
all the newspapers, they have some word limit. So in fact, very recently, just about a week back, I was sitting with friends. We were having lunch together, and then he said that he has read my all my manuscripts and everything, and this has been remarked by even others also. They said that they have seen a marked evolution in my writing. Uh, the way I had started off, and the way now I am writing. And as I said, it's a learning process, it's a work in progress. You are always work in progress. I'm also a work in progress. And so now what happens is that if supposing in my flow I have written a 900 word article and I have to condense it to 500 words, I have to be my own biggest editor. I have to slash a lot of what I have written, so that it is condensed into that 500 words or 600 words or 700 words, this thing. And so that is, and then and but the article also goes through the same iterations. It has to, that you write the first draft, and then you edit it, and then you read it again, then you read it, and every time you read it you get new ideas, that okay, I mean, it is not making sense. And so I have probably started thinking more for the as a reader. Once I have written it, you have to be dispassionate enough to read it as a reader, not as a writer. And that's how I do that. And so and fortunately for me, a few of my articles got published in Hindu. They liked those articles enough. Many of these articles, almost about, I think, 30, 40 odd articles are, or 30, 38 or so articles are now published in the Pioneer. Almost every week, whatever I send to them now, they get published. And since I was an avid reader, so I used to review the books. Initially, I was posting it only on my website.
Okay.
Then this time I decided to send it across. I liked the book enough that I decided to send it across to the newspaper, and they accepted it. They published it.
So, Chandra, I think we can talk for hours and hours about your experience about writing, and we all can get benefited from it. But I think we need to stop somewhere. So, I would like to thank you very much for sparing your valuable time and giving insights about your life experience and how you have translated into the books as well as the articles, which are helping not only you, but I think everyone who's getting the opportunity to read. And I hope that you will continue to write as long as possible. And congratulations for for the upcoming book, that is the fourth book that is coming up. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, Mr. Magla. It was a pleasure to be here with you, talking to you, and to your other viewers. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, and thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, and see you again next week, same time. Bye bye.